Now, I have been making videos on this machine. I bought this machine, because it's very similar to another one I've restored in the past. And the reason I purchased it was because I wanted to have an example of this to work on and to show all of you. Now, you're seeing this side of the machine. You will see, I'm not sure which order the videos will post, but I've just done one on how to replace the bobbin winder tire, how to make sure that your friction pulley is running smoothly. But I wanted to make a video of something that I have not found a lot of examples of online. And this, of course, is the tension assembly for this machine. It's going to be similar to that of the Kenmore models, although there can be some variations. Now, this is a tension assembly that I have demonstrated in a prior video on how to thread. And I have a couple of theories as to why these machines are not as heavily sought after as some of the other models, such as the Singers, in spite of the fact that they are plentiful. There are many of these machines out there, either under the white name or one of the other names that they were built as a private label brand for. And when you think of that old Don Quixote song, "To run where the brave dare not go," I thought about that line when I saw this, because very often it can be scary to take on something when you haven't done it before. You don't want to hurt your machine, but I know that I wanted to go inside of this and show you all what it looks like and how to access it. Because as I've mentioned before on a number of occasions, the fact that these machines do not have computers, they don't have alarms, they don't have beeps, they don't make noise, they don't talk to you, they certainly don't have Wi-Fi. These machines, all analog machines, whether you're talking about sewing machines or a coffee grinder or an automobile, analog machines actually have a way of communicating once you get to know them. They make sounds, and they behave in ways that will tell you whether they are happy with what you're doing or whether they are unhappy. And I will explain that as I go through this procedure. Now, I have great light coming in here today, and I'm going to try to get this lit for all of you in a way that's going to show up. See if I can bring even more light down here, because I'm trying to balance it with what's coming in the window. So again, the way the tension assembly works on this machine is you have a tension assembly adjustment dial, and I think it's labeled from 1 to 8, I believe. And of course, 1 being the lowest tension, and as you turn to the right, it gets tighter. Now, this tension assembly is a different design, but it doesn't mean it's odd or weird. It was, like I say, this thing was in production for decades. Generations of people sewed on these machines. So they had to have been doing something correct. Now, when you look at this, you are going to see there are 3 screws that we're going to loosen to take this off. We are not going to loosen the screw that you see here. I'm going to have to zoom in here and see if this will show up for you. Okay, I'm going to add another little light source here. Don't know if you guys can see this, but right here is a screw that screws into the side plate. And there's another one up here. We are not taking those out, okay? What we are going to take out is one screw right here on this back end of the tension assembly plate, because the knob, the tension knob, which is here, you will see that the assembly plate actually wraps around. Let's zoom back out so you can see what I'm talking about. It actually is like an L shape, right? It starts here and then comes and it wraps around the front and it stops. And on the front is, let's see if it's showing up for you all here. Sorry guys, I had to move the camera or you wouldn't see this. Here is the other plate. The other screw. So there are 2 screws that we're going to remove in order to remove the tension assembly. And we're also going to remove this screw, which is going to take the knob off for us. And of course, that's going to come off first so we can get the plate off. And so I'll be doing that, but I'm going to move the camera again, but I want you to see this. Otherwise, just hearing a description doesn't quite get it. Because we are, after all, removing something on a video, so it would be nice for you guys to see. All right. So I'm going to take one of my screwdriver tips. You always want to get the screwdriver tip that is closest, the most snug to your screw. And this one's a little thick, so it's going to make the screw, it's going to be a little rough on the screw, and I don't want that. So I'm going to find one a little less thick. These are little screws, by the way, so that should work okay. When you take these screws off, you're going to want something to put them in, like a little pan. They are not much bigger than a peppercorn, and you don't want to lose them. Now, this is the lid to my screwdriver set, and I'll put them in there. But I recommend you not just sit them on the table or near the machine, because they can go rolling, and when they do, you may have a whole project there waiting for you just to find them, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to, oops, hold on. Before I turn this screw, just corrected myself there. As I said from the top, we're going to do this screw first. And you'll want to hold, I would put your tension assembly knob, just put it at number 1. And then I'm going to loosen this screw in the center. If your screw is stiff, if it doesn't want to come loose like mine did, don't force it, okay? Remember, this is a plastic knob that this screw is going through. And you want to be gentle. So you can always put a little WD-40 or sewing machine oil on it and let it sit. And then give that screw a little time to contemplate coming out. And then hopefully it will. There's the screw. It came right out in my fingers. And I'm setting it again in my tray because I'd like to know where it is later on. Now, when I take this out, unlike the Singer tension assemblies, notice that this comes out and it has slid on this little shaft here. Now, what's curious about this is that this shaft is shaped a little like the letter D. It is round except for this left side, which is flat. Now, when I look into the back side of this little plastic knob, I don't actually see a different shape. And that is because it is round. Now, I'm going to test something to be sure, because I think, in fact, it has a flat side. Okay. The flat side, guys, this is a very difficult thing to pick up on camera. I'm going to shine this light in here, okay, and it may or may not work, so no promises. All right. See if we can get that. I don't know if you guys can tell this, but notice where my finger is. That is inside this hole, which is round at the top. Inside, it actually has, I call it a chamfer, but there's a flat edge, okay? Now, the rest of the hole, as it goes all the way down, is round, okay? It's round in there, if you can see this. Using a work light to get some light in there. Now, but notice when I turn it up, that top edge is flat, okay? So it could be that your knob, if it's been taken off before, was not even in the right position. Now, you might say, well, how am I supposed to see where that is? Notice that look at the, if you look at this knob like so, let me see if I can, there we go. You'll see a little indentation. It looks like a smiley face. We'll call it that for lack of a better word. Now, look at the smiley face and look at 12 o'clock directly above it. That lines up with the flat section of the inner part of the hole of this knob. Talk about getting out to the weeds, right? Now that's important because when this knob, right, goes back, we want to see I will actually line it up for you. Okay, so you're going to find, we're going to do this later, so don't worry, because I'm just taking it off, but I really want to remember to tell you all this. Okay, now, right at this very moment, the flat side is sort of facing almost 6 o'clock. We'll see if we can get it anymore. Okay. All right, now it's back. I can't move this shaft anymore, and I think that's where it stops. Okay. Now, remember the flat side. if you're looking at the knob, you drop the knob there. Okay. If you're looking at the knob, guys, notice that the smiley face is on the bottom. Above the smiley face is where this flat flange is inside this round hole. It would be very easy to miss this, okay? So this kind of helps you with a little marker, okay? So remember, this little circle above the smiley face is where your flat edge is, and that needs to align with the flat edge of this, which is facing up, okay? So that's how we're going to do this. We're going to put this in that manner, okay? So I should have, my knob should now be set so that the shape of the D of that shaft aligns with the shape of this, okay? Now, when that happens, that means that this knob is going to work. Now, I don't have the screw in there, so, bear with me. Now, let's remember that when we go to put it back, okay? So I'm going to turn this all the way as far as it'll go, and that should be potentially the tightest side. We will see. But anyway, this is something we will focus on. All right, onward and upward. Okay, on the other side of that knob is a washer. Now that washer is important. You don't want to lose it. It's on there for a reason, and it goes in this order. Okay, so if you're worried about remembering, you can always take a picture with your phone or whatever you like to just sort of take a picture of how your machine looks when you start, right? So you have the screw, you take the screw out, then you take the cap off, then you're going to take the washer out. And the washer is shaped like a circle, obviously, but take a look. It'd help if I put it in front of the camera for you. Notice this, guys, it's not completely round. The opening in the washer has a straight edge. It's like the letter D. So again, we want it to go on the same way, right? Because it's not designed to spin around like you would think. The other thing to notice is that this washer is shaped not completely flat. So if I lay this washer flat in my hand, see how that's going to show up on camera there. Okay, so there it is in my hand, guys. Don't know if you can tell this, but it tends to have, and I don't know if this was original, it could be, or it could be that somebody bent it, but it is actually bent with a slight bias towards you, okay? So if I turn it over, it's going to look like it's slightly curved in an arch, right? So it's going to have a curve. When you lay it flat, it's going to have a slight curve. And we want that curve to face out toward us because that's how we found it. All right? And I'll discuss this again when we put this back together. So don't worry, but just kind of giving you a heads up there. Now we are ready to start looking at the screws that attach the tension assembly unit, okay? Now, go along with me and don't try to pull this off yet because there's a trick to it. And this is where when I was mentioning to you all earlier about machines speak to you, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. If you do it the wrong way, you could damage it. Now, talk about where the brave dare not go. So here we go. So I'm going to take the screw, I'll loosen it. Mine's not fighting me, but if yours does, you know what to do. A little WD-40 or oil and time will let it loosen. And there it comes. Remember I told you guys, look how tiny that is. So make sure you have a tray, have a little place for it, so you will remember where it goes. And just so you know, the screw, which is also small, that holds in the little plastic tension adjusting knob, it has more of a flat head to it, okay? It's more of a flat head. The screws that hold this assembly to the body of the machine, they have like more of a mushroom round head, if that's helpful, and there'll be two of those. Now, before I take off this other screw and we get moving, I'm going to show you, I want you to go ahead and get yourself some painter's tape. You can use masking tape, but masking tape can be sticky and create a mess. Painter's tape is designed to stick for a while, but it's a lot easier to get back off, okay? So I want you to get some of that and have some of that handy. Okay guys, so I've got my painter's tape. It doesn't really matter what width you have. When we go to reassemble this is going to be a useful, sort of a little helper's guide. Many of you do this type of work by yourself. You have two hands. If you have other set of hands, that's fantastic, okay? And again, make sure, of course, your sewing machine is unplugged. Never have it plugged in when you're working on it. That's silly. Okay, now, before I go to get this other screw out to remove this, can you guys guess what I should be doing and what I should be taking out? Of course, it's going to be the thread. There's no need to keep the machine threaded, and don't worry, we're going to rethread it for you, and I'll even add a step that I did not show you in the last video. Let's see, all I need now are scissors. One of the things you will notice, and if you've watched me do these videos, you already know this, is that sometimes you have things, you do them in a certain order, and then you forget and you have to go and get your tools. And so, you know, nothing to worry about, guys. Let's move this out of the way for a minute. Okay, now, remember the thing I told you all about bobbin cases and how they don't like the thread to be pulled backwards from the way they are threaded. The same is true with check springs. They don't appreciate you taking the thread out backwards because thread paths go in one direction, okay? So let me tilt this back a little bit so you can see. I'll move the camera back, see a little bit more what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I will, before my thread comes down into the check spring, right, I'm just simply going to cut the thread because the next stop after the check spring, before the check spring here, is going to be, I have a thread guide at the top and then my spool, right? You'll see the little white spool up there. Many of you have seen this if you've seen the other videos. So I'm just going to leave the spool up here. I don't need to take it off. Now notice I've got the thread that's still in my needle down below. Okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? The first thing I need to do, make sure your needle is up and just use your hand. Again, don't plug her in. Now, the thread may be down in my fabric for all I know. Let's take a look. Yeah, I had some fabric here and I think my thread's there. So I can cut my thread here. And all I'm going to do is pull the thread through the needle. It would help if I lift up my presser bar. That makes things a lot easier. You definitely want your presser foot up anytime you are threading the machine, or in this oddball case, unthreading the machine. Now watch, I'm going to pull the thread in the direction. It always moves from the left to the right on these, as is true of most vintage machines. And watch guys, you'll see the thread moving. It'll come up the way it was designed to, just like as if you were sewing, until we get to the end that I cut. And that keeps the check spring and everything else happy, right? You don't want to make your machine unhappy unnecessarily. Give it, treat it the way it was designed to be treated. Okay, so the thread is out. Now, one thing we can do for this procedure, memory serves me right, I believe we can leave the foot on. I don't think it's going to be in our way. If it is, we'll take it off. Now, this is probably the most important part of this, guys, and that's why I saved this screw over here. Let me get my good screwdriver. And I'll explain why. I'm going to do my best to illustrate this on camera. So I'm turning the other screw, okay? I should be able to get it the rest of the way out with my fingers. Notice this is the screw that attaches the chrome-plated assembly to the body, not the screws that go into the green steel that you see here, okay? Now, notice I just let go of that and it didn't move. Yours might, but probably not. Now, this is one of those situations where, as I was explaining to you all before, this is where you want to listen to your machine. And I've kind of gone over this with all of you when we've been talking about the old Kenmore free arm. Some of you are asking about it. Oh yeah, it's still sitting outside. It's still waiting to come out of its misery, and we'll see how that goes. And I've told all of you before, if you ever have a knob on a machine or a lever outside and it's stiff, if you test it very gently and it won't move the way it should, you want to stop, right? Because you can damage a machine when you're trying to force it into something it's not ready for. Sometimes that has to do with the fact that it simply wasn't designed to move that way. Very often with these machines, they are supposed to have movement, but they are gummed up. The old oil and grease has become like a glue. And you've seen my other videos on that. But that's all about listening to the machine. You know, you're trying to get to know the machine, you're not familiar with it, and if you're getting it in a rough state. Now in this situation, I'll show you what happens. For example, let's move the camera and you guys can see. Now if you look at this assembly, which is still sitting on the end of the body there, you might think, hey, look at that. I got the front screw off, I got the back screw off. You might think that you just simply grab it and you pull it to the left, right? That would be not correct. And you do not want to do that. Okay, and I'll show you how I discovered this when I was learning to do this in prior restorations. Now let's get you guys back focused. Have to move this camera around sometimes because I really want you to see some of the angles. Now, if any of you try to do that, you will soon discover, and I hope you don't, I hope you don't try that, is you don't want to pull this to the left, okay? You don't want to pull it, away to the left side of the machine, even though it looks obvious, because there's nothing else on the back holding it here. But if you try that, it's going to tug, okay? If I take this device and I start pulling toward me, it doesn't want to come, and you're thinking, hey, did I miss a screw? No, you did not. What you cannot see is that this device is also anchored to a linkage inside the machine, but you can't see it. And that's why, notice I'm holding it with my fingers, trying to get a hold of the back plate here, okay? I can move the front. The front's ready to go, but the back is not, okay? It's tugging. It's like a dog with a toy in its mouth that doesn't want to let go. Do not force this, okay? Do not do that. You will damage it. But let me show you how she comes off. Now watch what I do when I take the plate and I come down, okay? Now, inside, and it's still feeling tense, where's my little screwdriver? Inside here, you may not notice this right away, but at the very bottom of this slit, this is where your take-up arm has its space to move. Let's angle up, you can see. There's your take-up arm, and of course it rides up and down in that slot. At the very bottom of this slot you'll see something that looks like a flathead screw. And you're not unscrewing anything, but I'm just taking this screwdriver, this small one, because I can get it in here. Okay? And there's a pivot. Now, this right now you don't sense any movement here because it's actually still embedded in your plate. That's why your plate doesn't want to pull to the left. Okay. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the plate and I'm going to wiggle it free by pushing downward in a downward motion. Okay, now watch guys. It's kind of a weird thing to get a hold of. And there it came. Okay, now nothing broke, everything, but you heard a little snap, right? You heard a little clicking. This is what the inside of your, and I'm going to have to change our angle here. Bear with me, guys. I'm a one-man show here, one-person show, but it's important for you to see. So here we go. Let's get a better shot of this. There you go. So this is the inside of the tension assembly. Now, when you look at this thing, you think, wow, what were they doing? You know, it looks very different than the tension assembly of a Singer and most other machines. Well, here it is right side up, sorry, okay. So there's the little knob. Now, as we turn in, you will see, here's the back of where you're turning when you're trying to adjust the tension, right? You can see it. See if it'll, I don't know if she wants to prop up here. Let's try that. Okay. Notice that this is the back side of when you are turning the tension adjusting knob, okay? It is attached to a bracket, and the bracket comes down and it rests here. Behind there is a spring, and then this bracket continues up, okay, and I'll show it to you from the side. So you can see it continues up and it rides here. Now, behind there, or actually, let's see if this will even show up at all. Underneath that little ledge that you're looking at, guys, that is where your check spring lives. That's why it's not as easy to see it when you're threading it, okay? So your check spring starts, you guys can see the spring in the center there. You see the little, you see it wound? Well, that check spring, it's wound there, and then it extends to a small, let's see if that's even going to show up. It extends to a very small nut that you can't really see. Oh, here it is. Here we go. All right. It extends out onto that little nut there, which is, all right, I'm going to have to point to this with my other free hand. Okay, so the spring I was telling you about, it actually extends out and it connects here to this little, let's zoom in. But zooming in some more. Here we go. Okay, let's see if we can get this to be still for a moment. It connects here. And then the check spring keeps on going after it touches this point, and then it extends out into the area that you are looking at when you are threading through the check spring. And you know, it's an awfully complex device when you think about it compared to some of the others, but it works. Now, like all other mechanical devices that are made of steel, it is incredibly durable. However, they have been known to occasionally get, you know, dust or lint. This one, you don't see much lint at all. Now, I took this apart the other day as I was working on it, but I decided I'm taking it all apart again for you guys because I want you to see the inside, okay? Now, you might think, okay, what am I going to do? If there's any grease or old oil here that's impacting any of these moving parts, okay, I'm not so much worried about the outer plate. That's an aesthetic thing. You can clean that if you want, but that's not really the issue. What you're going to do, I'm going to prop it here so I can show all of you. You are going to take your oiling device. Now I have this little micro oiler, okay? And I've already oiled this, so I'm going to point to you, with you guys instead of drowning it in oil again. But obviously, you want this little section here. This section here is right behind the knob where you adjust your tension. Make sure you get a drop of oil here. You want to hit this spot, this spot, this spot. Now, let's go in profile. Okay, now you're going to see this, well, it looks like a little gear here, but it doesn't really, I can't tell that it's moving. It may have some movement in there when you're adjusting your tension, although I have yet to be able to, you know, I can't really, there you go, you can see the gear right at 12 o'clock there. Now, whether this gear has movement, it might, I can't verify. Maybe one of you know, and if you do, please share your comment. But again, I cleaned it. You can take a small lint brush, go down in there and clean out anything. I didn't find much of anything in here. You know, it's kind of sealed up and it doesn't really get that filthy, but yours might. In any case, make sure you get that out, blow out any dust, and then you want to put a drop of oil, 1 or 2 drops here, and then a drop where the spring comes around this little knob. I'm not sure if that relies on lubrication or not. Now, take a look here. I put lubrication on this pin, assuming that there might be some movement with these parts. Again, I've never seen them moving because, of course, it's always on the machine. But we know that machines with metal need oil. And be very careful. You don't need a lot of oil, guys. there may be some residual on here. If yours is kind of gummed up, if you have a lot of grease, take your cotton swab and clean it out. Again, this part here is just that's just the cover. It's not really impacting the function of this. You can clean it if you want. That's more of a you can do that, but it's not impacting your machine and it doesn't affect the aesthetics. If anything, by the way, old grease and oil on a part of the machine that does not interfere with its mechanics, such as the center of a drive shaft, it can actually help to prevent oxidation. So it actually acts as kind of a coating. So I don't worry with that. I'll clean the outside, obviously, because we want the machine to glisten and look beautiful. So you have now seen the innards of this thing. But we're not done yet, because let's say you get this oiled, you've done your thing, you've oiled, and by the way, don't forget to oil this side and then the inner side of this pin, because this pin moves, or I think it moves. It certainly turns, but go ahead and put a drop here, right there, like I mentioned. Okay, so you got this thing out, you got it oiled, and you're like, oh, okay, great. If the spring is there, if this is not working, you'll know because the spring will be broke and you may even see a piece come out. This spring is obviously built really tough. 1940s, I'm pretty sure it's the original spring. I would be willing to guess. So remember the rule when we're oiling a machine, particularly underneath, and we're not sure where to do it. If you see any place where metal touches metal, just put a drop of oil. Again, don't flood this thing, because if you do, it's going to it's going to feed like gravity, and you're going to have oil in your needle, and you're going to have a messy, oily mess when you go to sew. That you can clean that up, but again, just an ounce of prevention. Okay, folks. Now there is. I'm going to move the camera. I'm going to show you how to put this back, and why sometimes when people take these apart, they get frustrated because they can't figure out how they go back. And if you don't put it back correctly, you can screw it in and it'll look nice, but it's not going to function, and I'll explain why. So let me move the camera, and then we'll start heading toward getting this puppy put back together. Okay guys, we are back on the side of the machine. You don't see the tension assembly right now because I want to show you how we're going to reinstall it. And there is a reason and why it installs just one way. And I'm going to show you how. And then it'll be apparent why we had to kind of wiggle and bring it down to get it off of the machine. Instead of just pulling it out, and why that would not work, or we would damage it. Now, I'm going to show you, remember I was telling you this lower area where the take-up arm comes down, it comes up and down. Well, the take-up arm is up and out of our way. We don't want it down here. We don't need it. Now watch this. I'm going to take this little screwdriver of mine and I'm going to push here, and when I do, watch what happens down here. Did you see that move? It pivots. There's a piece here. I call it a linkage flange because I don't know its proper name. I was not an engineer for the White Company, obviously, but we know that it has a purpose, and it's understanding what to do with it is a little more important here than the proper name. Now watch, I'll move it again, right? So it's attached to a piece with a screw. Now, I can notice that this thing pivots, right? It comes out, well, it comes straight, sort of straight, and then if I want it to push in, it goes to, let's say if you were looking at it in profile, it's more like it moves from, say, 6 o'clock back to 5, sorta, okay? That's not exact, but it's an approximate. So let's let you guys see it from the side. I don't want to belabor it, but I want to explain. Maybe it'll make more sense. Okay. So I'm pushing in. Now, watch what happens when it comes out. Did you guys see it move? It moves right here. Okay. You don't want to really start trying to jam something in here and pull it. You don't want to damage it, right? So I've got my little screwdriver. It doesn't move that far. Watch. See? And then it pivots back to what I call 5 o'clock in profile. Okay. So why does this matter? The reason this matters is that this device, whatever it is, was holding on to the tension assembly, and that's why you can't pull on it, because as that piece comes down, and I'll show you when we go to put this back. It's going to go or rest right in here. So let's see how I want to illustrate this for you all. Okay, so here's your, let's zoom back up, a little too close. Okay, so here it is. Get out of the way, light. Okay, here is your plate and your tension assembly. Okay, when you turn it this way, you will see that there is a flange here that runs parallel. It may be a giant, it's part of this whole piece here, right? See how it moves up? And then there's a space. You've got a little more than 1/4 of an inch between the face plate of your assembly, which is, this is the part you see when it's on, and then there's this here. And I'm trying to get the light so you guys can see that little spot. You should be able to see a space here, guys. Yeah, right there, okay? Now, this pin, this piece has got to be on right in the middle between these two pieces of steel, okay? It's going to fit, here we go. It's going to come down and it's going to go just like this, okay? And that is what holds it in, and this is part of its function. If you don't install it with that piece in through here, it won't function. You may be able to get it on just fine, it'll look great, but it won't work. And this is why when you go to pull it off, you can't pull it straight to the left because you'll bend and damage this, okay? That's why it has to be kind of wiggled. You saw me wiggling down and then it came off. And then you can hear this, it'll snap back, but no harm, no foul. So we are going to put it back. Now, here's the fun, tricky part, and it's not hard. I've done it, you can do it. Watch. I'm going to, see if the light comes back on here, that's better. All right. One of the things you want to do is you want to make sure, because this thing, you remember it's like a little flipper, right? It pivots. And all you have to do, watch if I just touch it. It pivoted back to 5 o'clock. And if that happens, you put this on, you're going to miss it because now it's going to be on the outside of, it's going to be hitting here, guys, and that's not where you want it. You want it in here, right? So you have to kind of, it's like a sleeve. You got to put it down. It's like putting your arm into the sleeve of a shirt, if that makes sense. Now, you say, well, how am I going to do this? Well, what you do is you can take a screwdriver, just something. Again, we're not unscrewing anything up here. This is, I just need to push on this piece, okay? Now watch, I'm going to push here, and that's going to hold this linkage piece. It is now, watch, see, I can push, and I'm holding it down. I say 6 o'clock. It's more like 5:30, you know, it's close enough. So now my goal is, notice that there's a space here. So I'm going to take this assembly, I'm going to come in, I've got to come below. Remember, I can't come in from the side because it's just going to push this linkage in. I have to come in underneath, like the same way we came out, right? This linkage, for lack of a better word, needs to go on the inside, is that it pulls on the piece that I'm pulling on with my finger here. Let's see if that shows. See how I'm pulling toward it? It's going to do that with the pressure bar lever, and that's why it needs to go where it does. If it doesn't, it's not going to release your tension. And there it goes. Okay. Now, I'm going to do this again. Again, when the pressure bar lever is up, I push, but it's still too far in. That little piece is not close enough to 6 o'clock for me to get it in here. I drop the pressure bar lever, I push here. Now it's coming out further toward me, which is going to give me just enough clearance to get it, again, on. I want it to go in this little space. Hold it still. Yeah, I want it to go like this. Yeah, I want it to go here, not here, right? Because it's going to pull on this spring. Now that I have my presser foot down, I can get it to come out further. And now I'm going to move. In fact, I'm going to move all of you guys with me. Okay, guys, hang in there with me. I have a strange assortment of work lights and camera angles to try to show this to you. Now, here's our little tool that wants to be in the right place on this tension assembly. And this will be a better angle for you guys. Watch. I want it to go down through here, right? So we can pull, because that affects your tension assembly when your presser foot is up or down, and that's crucial. Now, here is this little flange or linkage. Now that I have, watch what happens when I go to pull the, watch guys, watch this, okay? I'm going to pull the pressure bar lever up. Watch what happens. Well, it's going to move based on the movement of the pressure bar, okay? It's going to take away pressure off of the tension assembly so that I can pull thread out. Otherwise, your thread's going to be stuck. Now, I'm going to lower that piece back down, and now I can push this out further. I'm going to still use my screwdriver here, if you see that up at the top of the screen. But now, watch this, guys. You see the flange, you see that spot. I'm going to come over, down. Remember, I'm not coming from the side, I'm coming below this. And as I move up, my goal is to get this on the inside. Almost. Now, okay, what do I got here? Here we go. Now, how do I know that I got it in? You're like, well, how does he know? How would we know it's there? Because without letting it move, keeping it level, if I pull from the back, okay, see my finger back here? I have it on the back of the plate. If I tug gently, not forcefully, just barely nudge it to the left, it wants to hold on. That means that piece is now where it needs to be. Okay? Now, you guys can't see this, but I'm wearing a light on my head. Okay? That's how ridiculous it gets, but I'm trying so, it's very hard to see this on your own, much less illustrate it. But it helps if you guys can actually see what's going on here. Now, so keep it here and you're holding it with your hand. Now, let's get this light off my head. That would be the entertainment part of this video. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera again. Okay guys, I got you back around here on the left. Now, the plate is hanging, don't let go of it. Okay, it looks like it'll stay, but it might not. Now, notice that the front, just like when we took it off, it's pretty loose. There's nothing really tugging. But this is the back plate, the back side of the tension assembly plate. Now, if I take my fingers and ever so gently nudge, as if I'm pulling toward me, don't even force it, just kind of nudge it. Oh, it's tugging. That means you have it in place, okay? Now, you guys remember the painter's tape I mentioned to you? This is where the tape comes in. So I'm going to take my painter's tape, and I'm going to well, in theory, I'm going to come down, I'm going to put a piece here, okay, and I'm going to come up and see if I can get that painter's tape to just hold for me just a bit. Your machine may have a little oil on it, so remember, what happens to oil, or what it does to getting things to have friction or stick. I'm going to put another piece here. Don't worry, your machine may look very sad at this point, but the tape is just a temporary way to kind of hold things still. Now, if that tape will be still and hold for me, that's your extra set of hands. Now, if you will recall, we have two screws that are going to go in the plate later when I put this plate back. But I'm not worried about the plate. The plate is just kind of giving us access. But remember the tray where you had your screws. The first screws you want to do are the two little tiny itty bitty screws, and these are the screws that hold on the tension assembly. They are the same length, so that at least that is not an issue. Now, these are really small, and I think that's the tip I want. So first thing you want to do is look for, I would go ahead and see if you can access the one on the front, just because it may be easier for you to see it first. And you want to get at least one of them in. That would be nice, right? And you may not have it fully lined up, so you're going to have to, oh, there's my little screw. You'll find the hole in the plate, and you'll have to kind of hunt around until you know that the screw is going to start setting in the threads of the hole of the body of the machine. I can't believe I said all that in one mouthful. We'll see. I'd like to say I planned that little tape springing off there so you guys could even laugh at me more, but that's okay. The only time I'm funny is when I'm not trying to be. That's the sad part of it. Okay, now we got that one in. You don't have to, snug it all the way. Just get it in there. Now, hiding behind the tape, of course I would cover that up, is it's kind of nice to leave that front screw not totally snug down, and that gives you a little space to kind of move things around. Now, I'm going to take this screw, and if I can get it, and I'll get my screwdriver behind it. That might help. I don't even need the handle for the screwdriver. These screws are not going to require a lot of tight torquing. Yeah, the way there. Okay. So now we've got the screw on the screwdriver. And remember, this thing, it's kind of hard to see. I'm going to see if I can get enough vision here where I can even see, because this thing has to be lined up, obviously. There we go. Maybe that's just needed a little help. Where are you, screw? Because remember, that piece that's holding it in place, that piece that has been the source of our frustration, or maybe it's just a learning lesson. It is holding it, but it's not going to necessarily line it up with the screw hole. That's something you will have to do yourself. Okay, aha, I feel the screw turning. We have threads. Aha. Now the front, that's another reason I felt the front shift a bit, because the back was seating, and that's why I wanted to keep that front screw from getting too overly tight. And now I can snug it. Now our tape comes out. Haha. Now, and this is why painter's tape is preferable to masking tape, so you have less to deal with. Okay, while we're here, guys, you can take cotton swab, no surprise. You can take the cotton swab, you can use a little alcohol if you want. This is quite clean. You can go and see if you've got any lint down here in the bottom. I don't see much of anything, but it's always good to check while you're there. And then, of course, we have oiling holes in the top that take care of this, but you can go ahead and add some sewing machine oil while you're here. Nothing wrong with that. There's my needle bar, my presser bar. Now, let's get the plate back on. And I'm going to go ahead, I've shown you guys this before. You can take your sewing machine oiler and you can put 1 drop of sewing machine oil on the threads of the screws. That's really future-proofing it, and that's especially helpful if you are the one in the future that might want to work on a machine again. But it takes no time, and it's just one of those things that, retentive people do. Sometimes it can help just to take the plate and put the screw through the hole of the plate, find the hole in the body of the machine, and just get one of them going. There we go. And it's not completely snug yet. I like to get the other one on before I snug them down. It lets me wiggle. You guys might appreciate a better view of what I'm doing here. So I just did this screw, and I haven't fully tightened it, but that lets me kind of wiggle the plate to find the other one. And watch your screws. They're going to want to pop out and go rolling around on you. if you have some sort of plate that you've got on the surface, I've got this fabric here, something that can catch screws, you may find that a very useful thing. That's true in any project, not just sewing machine restoration. Okay, we got that one. I'll come down here and snug. Don't over tighten them. You're not holding up the world with them here. And now our plate is back. Okay, guys, we have just reinstalled the tension assembly. And as you watched me, you noticed that, oh, if he had this, now when this comes up, it pushes in, or it pulls in, I should say, to let pressure off of the tension assembly. When the pressor bar handle in the back here is down, that allows that flange to come out, and it makes this much easier to install. In fact, it makes it possible. And of course, I had it that way when I did it the first time, and I forgot when I was showing you, and I'm kind of glad I did, because some of you might not have seen that, and I like you guys to see me when I have to kind of struggle, because it makes this more real. Okay, now, we are not done yet. Let's see. What are we lacking, folks? We have got to get our knob back on. So let's hop back over here on the front, and we'll hopefully get a little zoom in if I can make that work for you guys. Okay, remember what I was telling you, that this pin is shaped like the letter D. That's the flat side there, okay? Now, when you turn it to the right, that tightens. When you turn it to the left, that loosens. Okay? So, the flat side right now, what I want to do is bring up my presser foot for a moment, and that makes this turn a little easier. Okay. Now, what do I want to do? I've got this washer I showed you guys, remember? And it's a little sneaky, but one part of this washer, guys, is not completely round. Let's see if I can get it to focus in. I want it on a background you can see it. Here, take a look down here. In fact, let me put it on the fabric. You'll really see it then, I think. All right. Don't know if you can see this, guys, but this looks like it almost looks like an apple, and where my thumb is, that edge is straight. Okay? It's actually straight. It's not completely round, and that's because the washer is designed to go on that pin that is not completely round. But it's sneaky. It's not terribly obvious. So I'm going to line up the washer so that the flat inner part of that washer circle lines up with the flat part of this pin. These are the type of little things that can really throw you when you put something back together and it doesn't work and you wonder why. And that's it. So I'm going to get my screw here for the tension assembly knob. Now, remember what we were talking about early on, right? Find the face on this. Let's pan back just a bit. Remember this. Let's see if I can get this to show up on the light for you guys. Okay. Remember the back side of your tension assembly numbered knob has a smiley face on the back, right? And above it, we'll call that 12 o'clock. That is also the side of the inner part of this knob that is flat, and of course that is consistent with the pin. So what do I want? Behind that is the number 4. Okay, so he's like, well, how do I know? Do I start with 1? No, the number 4 is directly above there. So that's where we're going to line this up. We've got the flat part of the pin, and we'll look for the number 4 and make sure that I can get this lined up properly. See if we've got that. I want it to line up the way it was designed to work. let's see, between 4 and 5. Let's do it that way. I'm going to get the flat edge of my pin at the very top at 12 o'clock so I don't. All right, so now notice if I go to put this on and it's not lined up with the flat side, it's going to resist me, and that's part of the problem. That can cause damage. So if I come way over here, same thing. How do I know it's going to be lined up? Ba-boom, it went right on, right there. Okay. So when you've got the little knob on the outside, it doesn't want to go in, look for 4 and 5 with the flat side, and there you go. And that's when you know that you've actually gotten it in. Okay, now I've already put a drop of oil on the threads of this little screw that is going to attach our tension assembly knob. Don't you go moving, little knob. And I'm going to gently, remember we're doing this through plastic, so you want to do this gently. It screws fine, I'm not getting resistance. As soon as I feel it snug, I stop. Okay, now let's see what we've got. Okay. There's 8. I can come all the way out to 1, which is very little tension, and then it's going to increase the tension as I go back and forth. So, I'm going to leave it right at about 4, and let's pan back out. There we go, guys. We have now reinstalled the tension assembly flange. We have gotten the piece that needed to go on the inner part of this lined up, and we realized that if we have this up, if the presser foot is up, we can't get it on. The presser foot must be down, and you saw me reveal why that matters. I'll tighten this a little bit more. And then, once we do that, we use your tape to kind of hold this if you don't have a friendly pair of extra hands available. And then you're going to put your screws in, one on the front, one on the back. You do those first, and then you come back with your tension assembly numbered knob. And remember, the pin is shaped like the letter D. The washer that goes on first is shaped, the inner circle of that washer, shaped like the letter D. Make sure they line up. And then, before you're finished, look at the hole on the inside of this numbered dial, and you will see that it is too, in fact, shaped like the letter D further inside as you get down into it. Make sure you know, look around somewhere between 4 and 5, and then find the flat side, try to line those up, and as you push in, you'll feel resistance on either 3 or 6, and you'll find that spot, and you'll push in, and that's when you know you'll have it lined up. And there you go, guys. Next video, we're going to give it a test run and see if all of this work was correct, because, as I've mentioned many times, machines speak to you, and if it does not like what I did, it will be revealed in the stitches. Thank you for watching and hanging in there with me. Sometimes it can be hard to watch people struggle, but this is how sewing machine restoration works. And if I need to kind of find my way through this, after almost 9 years and 200 machines, you guys can do it too. I don't want my videos to be so polished. I make it look easy, but it's fun, right? And then we didn't hurt anything. So remember, listen to your machine. If it's not happy with you and you're paying attention, you will know, and you'll figure it out. Thanks again, guys. Stay tuned for the next video. We're almost done, and we're going to see if, in fact, I did this correctly, and I will show it right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.